Welcome to our deep dive into the Beaujolais wine region of France. I'm really excited to explore this stack of sources you've shared with us.
Yeah.
We've got articles on the history of the region,
Yeah.
detailed maps of the terroir, and even some tasting notes on specific wines. So buckle up and get ready to learn why Beaujolais is a region worth knowing and loving.
What's fascinating about Beaujolais is that it often gets overlooked
Right.
because it sits right next to Burgundy, one of the most prestigious wine regions in the world.
You're right. It's easy to get overshadowed by such a famous neighbor. But what we'll uncover today is that Beaujolais has its own unique identity and offers a style of wine that's completely different from Burgundy. In fact, it's all centered around one grape Gamay.
Exactly. And while you might have heard of Beaujolais Nouveau, that light fruity wine released every November,
Right.
there's so much more to the region than just that. Beaujolais also produces wines with incredible depth and complexity that can age for years.
That's what I'm really excited to dig into. So let's start at the beginning with the history of Beaujolais winemaking. Our sources say it all goes back to the Romans, who first planted vines in this region. I mean, that's ancient history.
It is. And after the Romans, the Benedictine monks played a crucial role in preserving and expanding those vineyards during the Middle Ages. They were meticulous record keepers, constantly experimenting with different grape varietals and winemaking techniques.
Wow, so these monks were like the OG sommelier.
You could say that. They laid the foundation for what Beaujolais is today. And speaking of foundations, we can't talk about Beaujolais without talking about Gamay. It arrived in the region in the 14th century and quickly became its signature grape.
Okay, so we've got the Romans planting the first vines, then the monks tending the vineyards, and then Gamay bursts onto the scene. What happened next?
Well, here's where things get interesting. You see, Gamay actually originated in Burgundy, but in the late 1300s, the Duke of Burgundy, Philip the Bold, banned it from the region. He thought Gamay was too vigorous, too productive, and that it made wines that lacked the elegance and finesse he desired for Burgundy.
So Gamay gets kicked out of Burgundy and finds a new home in Beaujolais. I'm starting to see why Beaujolais has this reputation for being a bit more free-spirited.
Exactly. It's like Gamay needed a place where it could truly express itself.
Yeah.
And it found that freedom in Beaujolais.
Yeah.
But of course, like all wine regions, Beaujolais has faced its challenges. The phylloxera epidemic in the 19th century devastated vineyards across Europe, including Beaujolais.
Phylloxera, that tiny little aphid that nearly wiped out the entire European wine industry.
It's hard to imagine how they bounced back from that.
Yeah.
It's a difficult time, but the people of Beaujolais were resilient. They replanted their vineyards with phylloxera-resistant rootstock and slowly but surely rebuilt their industry. And out of that struggle came a renewed focus on quality.
So we've gone from Roman vineyards to meticulous monks, a grape exile, and then a devastating plague.
Right.
It's amazing how all of that history has shaped what Beaujolais is today.
It really is. And speaking of shaping, let's dive into something that's essential to understanding any wine region terroir. Now, when we talk about terroir, we're talking about the unique combination of climate, soil, and geography that gives a wine its distinctive character.
I've always found the concept of terroir fascinating. It's like the wine is a reflection of the place it's grown.
Precisely. And in Beaujolais, the terroir is particularly interesting. You have this continental climate with cold winters, hot summers, and those big temperature swings between day and night. Those variations help to develop complex aromas in the grapes.
Okay, so we've got dramatic temperature shifts. What about the soil?
The soil is key. Imagine yourself walking through a vineyard in the northern part of Beaujolais. You'd feel these chunks of granite crunching beneath your feet. That granite is what gives the wines from this area their structure, their firmness, their ability to age.
So if I taste a wine from northern Beaujolais, I should be thinking about granite. I like that it's giving me a whole new way to think about wine.
Exactly. So picture yourself moving south, and the soil changes. Instead of granite, you encounter slopes covered in schist. This flaky, mineral-rich soil imparts a different character to the wines. Think minerality, complexity, a certain elegance.
And what about further south, where the clay soils are more common? What do those contribute to the wine?
Those clay soils tend to produce wines with a bit more body, more softness, and they amplify those juicy fruit aromas that Beaujolais is known for.
So it's like a puzzle, isn't it? All of these elements, climate, soil, even the angle of the slopes fitting together to create something special.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the 10 crus of Beaujolais.
Ah, yes, the crus. Now, cru is basically a specific named vineyard area that's known for producing wines of exceptional quality. Each of the 10 crus in Beaujolais has its own unique terroir, its own personality, which is reflected in the wines.
And they all come from the same grape Gamay, right? So
Yeah.
we're really seeing how powerful terroir can be in shaping a wine's character.
Absolutely. It's like taking the same artist and giving them 10 different canvases, each with a different texture and color. The artist, in this case the Gamay grape, will create something unique on each canvas.
I love that analogy. So tell me more about these crusts. What are some of the key differences between them?
Well, let's start with Brouilly. It's the largest crust known for producing wines that are light fruity and super easy to drink. They're the quintessential Beaujolais style. Then you have Côte de Brouilly, which sits on a higher slope overlooking Brouilly. The wines from Côte de Brouilly are a bit more structured, a bit more concentrated, thanks to the steeper slopes and different soil composition.
So even though they're right next to each other, the difference in elevation and soil creates two distinct styles of wine. That's incredible.
It is. And then you have crusts like Moulin Levant, which produces some of the most powerful and age-worthy wines in Beaujolais. These wines have darker fruit, firmer tannins, and they can really evolve over time.
Okay, so we've got Bruley, the easygoing one, Côte de Brouilly with a bit more structure, and Moulin Avant, the powerhouse. What are some of the other crusts I should know about?
Well, there's Fleury, known for its elegant, perfumed wines, and Julianos, which produces wines that are structured and mineral-driven. And then there's Chenes, the rarest of the crusts, with complex aromas and incredible aging potential.
Wow, so many different personalities within Beaujolais. It seems like there's something for everyone.
There really is, and that's part of what makes exploring Beaujolais so exciting. You have this incredible range of styles, all coming from the same grape, and it all comes down to the unique terroir of each crust. So now that we've talked about the history and the terroir of Beaujolais, are you ready to take a deeper look at the Gamay grape itself?
Absolutely. It seems like Gamay is more than just a simple fruity grape. There's clearly a lot more to it than meets the eye.
You're right about that. And I think it's time we debunk some of the myths surrounding Gamay and uncover its true potential.
I'm ready. Let's dive in.
All right, so remember how Gamay was banned from Burgundy back in the 14th century?
Mm.
Well, that wasn't just a random act of cruelty. It was because Gamay was seen as too vigorous producing wines that were considered too simple, too fruity, and lacking the complexity and elegance that Burgundy was striving for.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. Beaujolais embraces what Burgundy rejects.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Gamay, when grown in the right terroir, like the diverse soils and unique climate of Beaujolais, is capable of producing wines with surprising depth structure and, yes, even elegance. It's all about finding that sweet spot where the grape and the terroir are in perfect harmony.
It sounds like we need to re-educate ourselves on Gamay. Can we break down what makes this grape so special? What are its defining characteristics?
Absolutely. Let's start with acidity. Gamay wines are naturally high in acidity, which gives them this wonderful freshness and vibrancy. Think about taking a sip of lemonade on a hot summer day. That refreshing gonalizing is what acidity brings to wine.
Okay, so high acidity equals refreshing wines. What else?
Another key characteristic of Gamay is its low tannins. Now, tannins are what give wine structure and that drawing sensation you get on your palate. Because Gamay is naturally low in tannins, it produces wines that are smooth, silky, and incredibly easy to drink.
So low tannins are why Beaujolais wines are so approachable and perfect for casual sipping. What about the aromas? What should I be looking for when I sniff a glass of Beaujolais?
This is where it gets fun. Gamay is all about those vibrant fruit aromas. Think bright red fruits like strawberry, cherry, raspberry, and red currant. You might also find hints of floral notes like violets, and sometimes even a touch of spice like black pepper.
It sounds like a fruit basket in a glass. And I read somewhere that there are different clones of Gamay, just like Pinot Noir has different clones. Is that true?
You're absolutely right. There are actually quite a few different Gamay clones, and each one brings its own subtle nuances to the wines. Some clones might emphasize fruitiness, while others might bring out more spice or floral notes. It's another layer of complexity that adds to the diversity of Beaujolais wines.
So we've got high acidity, low tannins, vibrant fruit aromas, and even different clones to consider. It seems like Gamay is a much more nuanced grape than it often gets credit for.
I couldn't agree more. And the beauty of Gamay is that it's capable of producing wines that are both simple and complex light, and structured fruit-forward and age-worthy. It's a grape that can surprise you.
I'm really starting to understand why Beaujolais winemakers are so passionate about Gamay, but now I'm curious about how they actually transform those grapes into the delicious wines we get to enjoy. Can we talk about the production methods used in Beaujolais?
Of course. That's a crucial part of the story, and it ties back to what we were talking about earlier, how Beaujolais has this reputation for being a bit unconventional. You see, while most wine regions rely on traditional fermentation methods, Beaujolais is famous for something called carbonic maceration.
Carbonic maceration. I've heard the term, but I'm not entirely sure what it means. Can you break it down for me?
Absolutely. So in traditional winemaking, the grapes are crushed and the juice is fermented in contact with the skins. This is what extracts color, tannins, and flavor from the grapes. But carbonic maceration is different. It's a technique where whole uncrushed grape clusters are placed in a sealed tank filled with carbon dioxide.
Wait, so the grapes are fermenting from the inside out. That's wild.
It is. And this process creates wines that are incredibly fruity, with very low tannins and a light, refreshing style. It's what gives Beaujolais Nouveau its signature juicy character.
So carbonic maceration is the secret behind Beaujolais Nouveau's charm. But do all Beaujolais wines use this method? What about the crusses, which are supposed to be more complex and age-worthy?
That's a great question. While carbonic maceration is a signature of Beaujolais, not all wines are made this way. For the crusses and for wines that are intended to age, winemakers often use traditional fermentation methods or sometimes a combination of both.
So they're blending the best of both worlds. It sounds like Beaujolais winemakers are really masters of their craft, constantly experimenting and innovating.
They are. And I think that willingness to push boundaries is part of what makes Beaujolais so exciting. They're honoring tradition while also embracing new ideas and techniques.
I'm eager to learn more about these different styles of Beaujolais wines. We've talked about Beaujolais Nouveau and the crust, but is there anything else we should be aware of?
There is. Let's explore the full spectrum of Beaujolais wines, from the youthful exuberance of Nouveau to the nuanced expressions of the crust and everything in between.
Sounds like we're about to embark on a delicious journey. Lead the way.
Okay. All right, let's break down the different categories of Beaujolais wines. First, we have Beaujolais Nouveau, the rock star of the region. It's released on the third Thursday of November every year, and it's all about celebrating the new vintage.
I remember seeing photos of those Beaujolais Nouveau parties. Everyone's toasting with these vibrant purple wines. It seems like a really festive occasion.
It is, and the wine itself is meant to be enjoyed young. It's light-bodied, bursting with fresh fruit flavors and low in tannins, making it super easy to drink. It's the kind of wine you can chill slightly and enjoy with a wide range of foods.
So it's perfect for those casual get-togethers or just enjoying a glass on a weeknight. No need to overthink it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, moving up the ladder, we have Beaujolais Villages.
Okay.
This category represents wines that are a step up in complexity and structure compared to Nouveau.
So these wines are still approachable, but with a bit more depth.
Precisely. You'll often find more intense food aromas, maybe some hints of spice or minerality, and a longer finish. These wines can definitely benefit from a year or two of aging.
It sounds like Beaujolais Villages is a great choice for those who want something more than just a simple fruity wine, but aren't quite ready for the crust.
I'd agree with that. It's a fantastic category for exploring the diversity of Beaujolais beyond Nouveau. And of course, we have the 10 crusts, which we've already touched on. These are the Grand Cru wines of Beaujolais, each with its own distinct personality and aging potential.
I'm really starting to understand how the combination of Gamay and terroir creates such a diverse range of wines within Beaujolais.
It's a beautiful illustration of how the same grape can express itself in so many different ways. Now let's switch gears for a moment and talk about something that's been gaining a lot of attention in Beaujolais natural winemaking.
Natural wine. I've been hearing that term everywhere lately. What's the deal with natural wine?
Well, natural winemaking is all about minimal intervention in the vineyard and the cellar. It's about letting the grapes and the terroir speak for themselves. Natural winemakers typically use organic or biodynamic farming practices, which means avoiding synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers.
So it's a more sustainable and holistic approach to winemaking.
Exactly. And in the cellar, natural winemakers avoid using additives like commercial yeasts, enzymes, and fining agents. They might not even filter the wine, so you might see some sediment in the bottle, which is perfectly normal.
So natural wine is all about stripping away those artificial interventions and letting nature run its course.
That's a great way to put it. And I think Beaujolais, with its long history of respecting terroir and its focus on the Gamay grape, is a natural fit for natural winemaking. You're seeing a growing number of producers in Beaujolais who are embracing this philosophy.
Can you give us some examples of these natural wine producers? I'm curious to know who's leading the way in Beaujolais.
Absolutely. One producer who comes to mind is Domaine de Vissou.
Okay.
They've been practicing biodynamic farming for decades, and their wines are known for their purity, vibrancy, and sense of place. Another notable producer is Jean-Paul Brun. His wines are highly sought after for their elegance, complexity, and ability to age.
It seems like natural winemaking is more than just a trend. It's a philosophy, a commitment to producing wines that are authentic and expressive of their origins.
I agree. And I think it's particularly exciting to see this movement taking hold in Beaujolais because it aligns so well with the region's traditions and the character of the Gamay grape.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground already: the history, the terroir, the Gamay grape, the different styles of wine, and now natural winemaking. But I know there's one more topic we need to address: enotourism.
Yes, enotourism. It's playing an increasingly important role in the economic and cultural landscape of Beaujolais.
And rightfully so. Beaujolais is a beautiful region with rolling hills, picturesque villages, and of course, those stunning vineyards. It seems like a dream destination for wine lovers.
It is, and there's so much to experience beyond just tasting the wines. You can explore the Route des Vins de Beaujolais, a scenic route that winds through all 10 crusts. You can hike or bike through the vineyards, visit charming wineries, and enjoy delicious food and wine pairings featuring local specialties.
I'm picturing myself sitting on a terrace overlooking the vineyards with a glass of chilled Brouilly in hand, soaking up the sunshine and the scenery. It sounds idyllic.
It truly is. And if you're looking for something a bit more festive, you can't miss the Fête du Beaujolais Nouveau, held every November. It's a huge celebration marking the release of the new vintage with parades, music, and, of course, plenty of wine flowing.
It sounds like an unforgettable experience.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with our travel plans, I think it's important to acknowledge that Beaujolais, like many wine regions, faces its share of challenges. Our sources mention climate change as a major concern.
You're right, climate change is impacting wine regions all over the world, and Beaujolais is no exception. Rising temperatures, unpredictable weather patterns, and extreme events like heat waves and droughts are posing significant challenges for grape growers.
It's a daunting reality, but it sounds like Beaujolais winemakers are taking steps to mitigate these risks.
They are. Many are adopting sustainable viticulture practices, like using cover crops to improve soil health, implementing water conservation measures, and experimenting with new grape varietals that are more resistant to heat and drought.
So they're adapting and innovating to ensure the future of Beaujolais winemaking.
Exactly. And beyond climate change, there's also the challenge of market competition. The global wine market is constantly evolving with new regions and styles emerging all the time.
Yeah.
Beaujolais needs to find ways to stand out and appeal to a new generation of wine drinkers.
That's a great point. So how do you see the future of Beaujolais unfolding? Is there a sense of optimism despite these challenges?
I'm actually quite optimistic about the future of Beaujolais.
Mm-hmm.
I think the region has a lot going for it. First, you have the Gamay grape itself. It's a versatile grape capable of producing wines that are both delicious and affordable, which is a winning combination in today's market.
Right. And there's that growing interest in natural wine, which, as we've discussed, aligns so well with Beaujolais' traditions and terroir.
Absolutely. And you have this new generation of winemakers who are passionate, innovative, and dedicated to producing high-quality wines that express the unique character of Beaujolais.
It sounds like a recipe for success.
Wow.
So as we wrap up this part of our Beaujolais deep dive, I'm curious to know what stood out to you the most.
For me, it's the realization that Beaujolais is a region that's constantly evolving while staying true to its roots. It's a place where tradition and innovation coexist beautifully. And I think that's reflected in the wines themselves. They're approachable, yet complex, fruit-forward, yet age-worthy, and they offer something for everyone.
That's a fantastic way to sum it up. And for our listener, I hope this deep dive has sparked a curiosity to explore the world of Beaujolais wines. There's truly something special about this region and the wines it produces.
I couldn't agree more. But before we conclude our Beaujolais journey, I think it's worth taking a closer look at the relationship between Beaujolais and its famous neighbor, Burgundy. It's a connection that's both fascinating and complex. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's a tale of two regions intertwined by history and geography, yet producing wines with distinct personalities. I'm ready to unpack that dynamic. Let's dive in. Okay, so we're talking about Beaujolais and Burgundy, two regions that are practically neighbors, yet their wines couldn't be more different. Where do we even begin to unravel this relationship?
Well, the story starts with Gamay, the heart and soul of Beaujolais. Remember how we talked about Gamay being banned from Burgundy back in the 14th century?
Right.
That decision set the stage for the divergent paths these two regions would take.
Right. Duke Philip the Bold decided Gamay was too bold for Burgundy, literally. He wanted wines that were elegant and refined, and in his opinion, Gamay didn't fit the bill.
Exactly. Burgundy became the land of Pinot Noir, a grape known for its finesse complexity and often its high price tag. It's a region steeped in tradition, with a focus on meticulous winemaking practices and a hierarchy of classified vineyards.
Meanwhile, Beaujolais embraced Gamay with open arms. It became a haven for this grape, allowing it to flourish and express its vibrant, fruit-forward character.
And that's reflected in the overall style of Beaujolais wines. They tend to be more approachable, more fruit-driven, and generally more affordable than their Burgundian counterparts.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin. Burgundy, the serious connoisseur, and Beaujolais, the free-spirited adventurer. But I'm sensing there's more to this story than just the simple contrast.
You're right. The relationship is more nuanced than that. While Burgundy might be known for its grandeur and complexity, Beaujolais is increasingly gaining recognition for its quality and potential.
It seems like Beaujolais is stepping out of the shadows and carving its own path.
Precisely. Winemakers in Beaujolais are focusing on showcasing the nuances of their terroirs, crafting wines with more depth and structure than ever before. You're seeing more age-worthy Beaujolais wines, wines that can rival some of the better Burgundies in terms of complexity.
So it's not just about that easy drinking, fruit forward style anymore.
Yeah,
There's a whole spectrum of Beaujolais waiting to be discovered.
absolutely. And I think this evolution is part of what's making Beaujolais so exciting right now. It's a region that's honoring its traditions while also pushing boundaries and challenging perceptions.
It's a reminder that the world of wine is constantly evolving, and there are always new discoveries to be made. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the history, the terroir, the Gamay grape, the different styles of Beaujolais, and even its relationship with Burgundy.
We've also talked about the challenges and opportunities facing the region, from climate change to market trends. It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this? What's the one thing you hope our listener walks away with?
I think the most important takeaway is that Beaujolais is a region that deserves to be taken seriously. It's not just a source of simple, fruity wines. It's a place with a rich history, diverse terroirs, and passionate winemakers who are crafting wines of incredible depth and character.
I couldn't agree more. And for our listener, I hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore the world of Beaujolais wines. There's a style for every palate and occasion, from the light and refreshing Beaujolais Nouveau to the complex and age-worthy crust. So grab a bottle, raise a glass, and discover the magic of Beaujolais for yourself. Cheers.